Is hell just? Is an infinite punishment for finite crimes when the punisher himself has already defined justice as proportional, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth? Is that what we're supposed to understand as just, God's ridiculously disproportionate punishment? Well, here's Tim Barnett from the Redpen Logic channel to somewhat happily tell us why our finite suffering for 80 years of sinning is perfectly just.
Cami asks a good question here. She says, so you spend eternity in hell because of 70, 80, 90 years of sin. That's just to you? Let me offer two different ways Christians answer this question. First, imagine a murderer shows up in prison to serve his 25-year sentence. But on his first day in prison, he kills another inmate because he likes murder. The judge rightly adds another 25 years to his sentence. On the second day in prison, he kills another inmate. So they add another 25 years. So what are we up to now? 75 years in 2 days? What if that process continued? Well, he'd never get out, and that would be perfectly just. The point is, if people continue to sin against God in hell, then their punishment would never end, and that would be just.
First of all, let's start out by acknowledging how incredibly silly it is for people to think that they can know how places like hell work, when no one has any evidence whatsoever that hell even exists. Although I guess that is the beauty of making things up and just imagining other worlds based solely on the writings of late Bronze Age and Classical Age ignoramuses who didn't know where the sun went at night. Beyond that, Tim Redpen is confidently telling us that the reason an infinite punishment for our finite crimes is just is because those of us who do end up in hell will apparently never stop sinning, even once we get to hell. Of course, that raises the question, what kind of sinning are we going to be doing in hell? Tim used the example of a murderer murdering other prisoners in jail, but we're already going to be dead, so that won't work. Perhaps some of us are going to order shrimp for dinner. Maybe some of us will build altars of hewn stone or wear mixed fabrics. Personally, I know I'm not going to break the neck of the firstling of an ass should it not be redeemed. I'm a big animal lover, so that will definitely keep my ass in hell for quite some time. Pun intended. Do you see what I did there with the ass and the ass? Huh? I guess the bigger question is, how are any of us going to be able to sin in hell? I mean, when I'm drowning in a lake of fire, never being consumed and never actually drowning, just continuing to suffer horribly without end, and I can't imagine we'll get break time, how am I actually going to be able to commit a sin? I can't imagine I'll be able to lust after my neighbor's ass when my flesh is burning endlessly. I'll have much bigger problems than figuring out how to get laid. And I thought God hated sin more than anything else. Isn't that the reason he couldn't continue to hang out with us here after Adam and Eve chose to disobey God? Isn't it? He can't stand being around sinners until he rapes a young virgin girl and becomes his own son. Then he can hang out with sinners all day long. Republicans too. Sorry, I misread that. That should have been publicans. Is evil really not going to be vanquished? Is Tim saying that God will ultimately not defeat Lucifer? That sin and wickedness will continue forever and ever in hell? Holy crap, God clearly did not think that one through. Let's shift our focus, though, for a minute, because as silly and ultimately disturbing as Tim's excuses are, the far more disturbing part of his video is how okay Tim is with his fellow humans being tortured forever. He's basically smirking through the entire video, talking about the eternal torture of others, people he no doubt knows personally. Non-believers. There's absolutely no human solidarity in Tim whatsoever. He's completely at peace with you or me or whomever enduring this kind of endless torment. For Tim, whatever God says and does is good. It just is. even when God is violating his own standards regarding justice or anything really. Thou shalt not murder, but genocide is okay. Thou shalt not steal, but it's okay to take whomever's land. Thou shalt not rape, but wait, no, God's okay with rape. Never mind. This is some really sick stuff, my friends. And that's the challenge. Are we willing to corrupt our hearts and minds just to avoid the injustice of some imaginary being? Perhaps Tim should put down that red pen. I hear the fumes can really do a number on the old noggin, although I'm far more concerned about his heart. Once again, I'm May. Thanks for watching.